Welcome to this short video segment on wildfires. I'm here today with Dan Laux, who's a state fire supervisor at the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. And today we're going to be talking through a little bit more about how the DNR approaches wildfire management here in the state of Michigan. Thank you, Dan, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so first, can we get started? Can you just tell us a little bit more about you and what does state fire supervisor do? How long have you been with the DNR? Those kind of items.
Okay, sure. I've been with the DNR for going on about 30 years right now. Started my career in the field, working, fire suppression on the ground, and worked my way up through the system and the ranks, to the specialist and then up to the state fire supervisor. So currently, right now, my primary job responsibilities are the oversight of the fire program throughout the state of Michigan within the DNR, and that includes all facets of it, from suppression to prevention, prescribed burning, and our air program. Oversee the forest fire experiment station where we build up our fire equipment, and just a lot of all the other components that go along with the fire program here in Michigan.
Wonderful. So you mentioned a few terms there that I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into. Can you tell us a little bit more about the difference between wildfire suppression and prevention, and then prescribed burns and some of the other areas that you focus on?
Sure. Fire suppression activity is pretty much what it sounds. It's us engaging in out of control wildland fire, where we're taking action to bring that fire under control and to put it out. So that's kind of an emergency response type of an action. Our fire prevention activities are, targeted to try and prevent wildfires from occurring, or limiting their spread, by practicing some different concepts and techniques that would help aid in the suppression of an actual wildfire. And those prevention activities can range from going into the schools, talking to young children with Smoky Bear, and community events such as county fairs or parades, anything to just get the fire prevention message out to the public, and to help them understand, the things that they can do to help make sure that a fire doesn't start in the first place. And then the other item you mentioned, our prescribed fire program, is, that's those are intentionally set fires that we go and deal with to help either eradicate invasive species or try to do maintenance for wildlife habitat, and a lot of forestry regeneration practices, and some of them consist of burns for fuel reduction as well, to take that component away from if a fire did roll through that area, that it wouldn't be as intense by pre-treating it, so to speak, with fire.
So you just described a lot of different activities. I'm picturing a rather large team right now that would actually take to carry these out. Can you tell me a little bit more about who's involved in all of these efforts?
The core of our operation, it resides in the Forest Resource Division. We've been tasked with the responsibility for the fire suppression here in the state. Within the division, we have different positions. There is a core group of fire officers that carry the bulk of the responsibility for making sure things are ready to go and suppression equipment is up and in response. But in addition to that, we have a lot of our other staff, mostly in the forestry component of things, that also do the fire activity, which consists of needing to be annually fitness tested every year, working through the training qualifications to get higher level fire qualifications, for when they respond, and then some. So even though it's Forest Resource Division that deals with it, it is a department responsibility. So we have good cooperation from all the divisions within the department as well to to pull everybody together to make sure we have a response when the time comes.
So to that end, thinking about pulling resources and people together, I know that fires don't adhere to city or state boundaries, and the winds of change can blow fires in many different directions. How do you approach relationships and partnerships with folks that are doing similar work in, say, Ohio or Illinois, or those out west in California or Colorado that are kind of in the same boat as you?
hmm we have mutual aid agreements with, most agencies. The big one that covers us for, help in multiple states is through the USDA, the Forest Service, and that's part of the master agreement, which allows, that level of cooperation from state to state and agency to agency. So through that is where we can send our folks out west or, in down south, wherever there may be a need, and help them support their needs and activities. In addition to that, there's also, several compacts throughout the nation, and Michigan belongs to the Great Lakes Forest Fire Compact, which is the states of Wisconsin, Minnesota, and in the provinces of Ontario and Manitoba. So that's more of a local regional compact, but it functions the same way, and it allows us to share resources with each other and get that support coming in real quick timelines. Basically, a phone call can get a lot of support coming from one of the other compacts, and we see the benefits of that in regards to the air suppression resources that we were able to pull from either from Canada or Minnesota.
Wonderful. So you mentioned the air suppression resources that you have. Can you tell us a little bit more about the DNR's aeronautical program, or kind of your aircraft that you employ across the state of Michigan and beyond to monitor and suppress fires?
hmm we don't have any suppression aircraft ourselves. Those are brought in when the need is there. What we do have is a fleet of detection aircraft, and those are housed, in the UP as well as the Lower Peninsula. And their primary responsibility is, when fire need is there, on a fire type day, high fire day where there's a potential to have a new start. They're flying detection flights to monitor and try to pick up smokes, quickly, so that the ground troops can respond to those fires and keep them small by having that early detection. And in addition, obviously, weather doesn't lend itself to fires every single day. So in addition to that, they do a lot of other work for the department. They're flying, wildlife surveys, a lot of forest health type survey work, and just, whatever other needs there are to be looked at or dealt with from the air. But fire is their primary responsibility when the need is there.
How often are these aircrafts in the air actually detecting fires?
In the spring of the year, which is when our highest, risk for fires of occurring happens, they're probably up every day, unless there's no chance of a start occurring. But they usually go up and start a detection flight around noontime, and fly till 6 o'clock on average. But if there's activity or the conditions warrant, they'll stay up much later than that. And if they have an actual ongoing fire, then they'll be flying intel over the fire scene as well.
Sure. So thinking about homeowners here in Michigan and business owners here in Michigan, we get a lot of debris on our properties, right? So I was actually just reading an article that said that debris burning is recognized as the #1 cause of wildfires in Michigan. Can you tell us a little bit more about the number of wildfires that have been started by debris and why this is such an issue?
Yeah, it from as long back as I'm aware in history, yeah, probably 90% of our fire starts are usually caused by mankind. And the debris burning does seem to be the #1 cause, just because of the activity. But it's results from a lot of different scenarios. Either somebody happens to be burning on a day that's not so good, or winds kick up that weren't anticipated, or they, probably one of the bigger issues of concern is they'll start a fire and then they'll leave it unattended, whether they just go in the house momentarily for lunch, make a sandwich, or whatever it is, and they come out, and then that fire, they find that it's escaped and into the adjacent woodlands. So some of just some real common prevention activity that could help a lot of that is, where the location that you choose to do the burning, making sure that the adjacent fuels are removed so that chances of it spreading are less, and always be in attendance. So many of the fires that escape, if somebody was there with a shovel or bucket of water, they could have taken and suppressed that escape portion of the fire long before it turned into being a big problem fire.
So you just named a couple of ways that people can reduce their own risk. Are there any other ways that people can reduce the risk of starting fires here in Michigan? And are there resources that you have available on your website to kind of help us out?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing. Our website has a lot of good resources from the educational side of things on the steps that you can do to take to prevent that risk. But the number one thing is just check to make sure that on whatever day you want to burn, that burn permits are indeed being issued. And that's updated daily, especially in the spring of the year. We don't issue any permits for more than one day at a time, just because of the nature of the fuel conditions can change so quickly. So that's the first step. Make sure that permits are indeed being issued for the day, and if they're not, there's a good reason for them not being issued, and that's because it's not a good day to be burning. So people can get online and check that permit situation.
Perfect. So it sounds like you've risen in the ranks into your current position. You've spent a lot of time thinking about this and working in fires here in Michigan. What do you see changing for the DNR's wildfire management strategies over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
The discussion of climate change is always on the front burner. So there's going to probably be needing to be some adaptation to that if and when it does occur, and to what level. So a lot of it is in the monitoring stages now, trying to watch some of that stuff. The other thing is you see it across the nation. Resource availability continues to be a struggle, here in Michigan as well as nationally. Just not as many resources coming in. There's quite a lag time, from when fresh resources come on board to when they're fully trained and qualified to perform, at a level that they can, go on their own and really fill some needed voids. So, the funding that supports a lot of those resources is always a challenge for the different states and government agencies, because, it's just constantly on the front burner. And, the Forest Service, I know a big portion of their budget in the last several years has gone, more and more to the suppression of the wildfires, especially, the western fires. They just seem to keep getting bigger and longer seasons out west than they have been in the early on days.
So you mentioned climate change. Are there any areas within your scope of work where you see kind of a change in climate really impacting what you're doing?
It could very much so, depending on exactly what those changes could entail, but it may alter the season in which we are dealing with, what we would consider to be a typical spring fire season. It may start earlier and last longer, again putting more stress on the resources, because like our fire folks and this suppression resources, they're also doing a lot of the other division work, such as putting up timber sails and fixing roads and woods roads and bridges and stuff like that. So the more time that they have to be dedicated to doing fire response type activities, the more of those projects that are going to get pushed back or have to be completed at different times of the year. So that could be a big component of it. And then as we get into drier, droughtier conditions, late summer, that's when we tend to get a lot more of our lightning strike caused fires. And, those are usually a little bit more remote and harder to get to. And if we do get them droughtier conditions, the commitment to actually suppressing those fires becomes a lot more because, it's not just a fast surface fire that you can get on it and put it out right away, but they start to burn down into the organics in the ground, and it just takes a lot more to get them out.
And thank you, Dan, for joining us in this conversation about wildfires here in the state of Michigan.
Thank you, Ben, for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
And thank you for watching this short segment on wildfires.